Organelles. Organelles are very small, they're microscopic. These are the things that are inside cells that have a special function. So they perform various functions for a cell, and they're found in the cytoplasm. So sometimes students mix up cytoplasm for cytosol. Cytosol is the goop, and cytoplasm is the goop with all the organelles. So again, an organelle is a tiny structure within a cell that has some special function. They may or may not be membrane bound. That means they may or may not have a membrane that surrounds them. So if they have a membrane, they're definitely not in prokaryotes, they're only in eukaryotes. And eukaryotes have some that have membranes and some that don't. And prokaryotes have only the ones that don't have membranes, at least some of them. Okay, so here's just a description to start us off with all the membranous organelles. So again, the ones with the membrane are only found in eukaryotes. And to remind you of what a eukaryote is, it's so an animal, or a plant, or a fungus, or a protist. So a mitochondria, that's this one. Singular would be mitochondrion. This is the thing that does cellular respiration. And in a few slides, or maybe in the next video, I'll tell you why mitochondria are my very favorite organelle. They are so cool. The next one is the endoplasmic reticulum. Well, let's go back to mitochondria. So the whole point of cellular respiration is to make ATP. Okay, endoplasmic reticulum. This is the endoplasmic reticulum. There's smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and there's rough endoplasmic reticulum. The smooth one looks smooth and the rough one looks rough. The reason it's rough is because it has ribosomes attached to it. And so ribosomes have to do with making proteins. So the rough ER kind of gives it a scaffolding, a place to sit. And the proteins that are made on the ribosomes can actually weave their way right inside here and then be transported along and modified or whatever. The smooth ER has more to do with lipid synthesis and sometimes detoxification. So, for example, in the liver, there's a lot of smooth ER to help detoxify whatever is in your body that shouldn't be there, like alcohol, for example. Golgi body or Golgi apparatus, that's this. And it looks kind of like a stack of pancakes, but it's a bunch of membranous sacs. And vesicles will come to it and join. So a vesicle maybe from the ER will come here, join, and then get changed. And then on the other end, another vesicle will pinch off, and that vesicle will maybe bring stuff outside the cell. So it'll fuse with the cell membrane. I have a video for you in a little bit that will show you that. Or it might bring materials over to another organelle. So this is like the shipping and receiving of the cell. So kind of like UPS, it's going to take in materials and send them to some other place. A lysosome, that's a vesicle. So all that means is it's a little sac. It's like a ball, and this one's just cut. It has digestive enzymes in it. So those digestive enzymes will get rid of worn out cell parts. A cell that would have a ton of lysosomes would be a white blood cell. So white blood cells a lot of times, some of them anyway, will eat bacteria, phagocytized bacteria, or viruses, or cancer-infected cells. And the lysosome will fuse with those vesicles that are coming in with the bad stuff, the bacteria, for example, and it'll digest the bacteria. So lysosomes are very, very cool. Endomembrane system, I'm going to put that in parentheses. That's not really a separate organelle. It's that and that and that and that all working together. So a vesicle might branch off of here, come over to here, get changed a little, pinch off, and it might become a lysosome, or it might become a peroxisome or some other vesicle. Peroxisome, that has hydrogen peroxide in it, so it's just another vesicle. Vacuoles, let's get this out of the way. Here's a central vacuole. So this is a plant cell, and one thing that plant cells have that's different from animal cells is this central vacuole. So animal cells will have little vesicles that I guess you could call a vacuole, but this big central vacuole is unique to a plant cell or maybe certain protists, but it's certainly not found in animals. And the reason that that plants have this is to maintain something called turgor pressure. Turgor with an ER. I think it's Turgor. I don't know. Anyway, it helps to keep the cell crispy and plump, and so we'll talk about that in our next unit more. Chloroplasts are another thing that you're going to find in plant cells and certain protist cells, but certainly not animals. So the whole point of chloroplasts is that they have chlorophyll in them, which makes them green, and the whole point is that they do photosynthesis. So bacterial cells don't have chloroplasts, but some bacteria actually do photosynthesis, but they have to do it on their own outer membrane. So if you're a bacterium that does photosynthesis, you have to do it on your outer cell membrane. Eukaryotes are special because they have organelles inside of them. And so the chloroplast is the organelle that does photosynthesis, so that makes sugar. So plants are pretty cool. Amyloplasts and chloroplasts are things also found in plants. And so here's an amyloplast. And the thing that's cool is that you've already learned this name before. So remember amylase? That was an enzyme that broke down starch. And so an amyloplast is something that is an organelle that stores starch. So you're going to find these, for example, not in the leaves of potatoes, but in the roots. And so the roots will grow these big tubers, these potatoes, and in the potatoes, each cell will have lots and lots of amyloplast to store starch. Chromoplast, chroma for color, I think. These are red in this particular picture, so the chromatoplasts are individual little organelles that are red. So they're like chloroplasts or amyloplasts, but their color is red. They have red pigments, or actually they can be any color, not green, but they can be, kind of the prettier colors. So this stuff is responsible for making fruit colored. So an animal would see the brightly colored fruit and want to eat it and then disperse the seeds to another location so the baby plants aren't competing with the grown-up plants. And you'll also find them in certain flowers. So the flowers are a beautiful color, so that will attract bees, for example, to them, so so the plant can get pollinated. Okay, non-membranous organelles. So these are organelles that are not membrane bound. They're not made out of a membrane. Ribosomes, for example, this is the site of protein synthesis. So that means that's where you make proteins. So this is the place in the cell where proteins are made. So if this is the cell, here's the nucleus with its DNA. The DNA makes RNA, and then the RNA goes out of the nucleus, and it will go over to a ribosome, and that's where you'll make your proteins. So ribosomes are actually made out of protein. Their structure, their physical structure is made out of protein and a special type of RNA called ribosomal RNA. No membrane at all, no lipid bilayer, no phospholipids, none of that. Cilia and flagella, there is no membrane around those, at least in prokaryotes. Here's a bacterial cell. There are flagella here, and it looks like there are, I don't know if those are cilia there. But anyway, cilia are little hair-like projections, and flagella are longer ones. Usually there's only one or two or maybe three, whereas cilia are usually pretty numerous. And so if it's a single-celled organism, then these things will help to move the cell. If it's a multi-celled organism like in you, here's your epithelial layer of, let's say, your nose or your trachea or something. Here are the cilia. Excuse me. And so the cilia's job is to move something else, like mucus. The cytoskeleton. Cyto for cell. Skeleton is kind of what you think of. It's the bones, except it's not really bones. So if you look at a cell, the cytoskeleton are the proteins that are found in here that keep the cell shape the way it should be. So these are microtubules, like this one, and then there are microfilaments that are thinner. Centrioles, that's this stuff, each of these, and so together I think they're called a centrosome. Anyway, these are the things that help an animal cell, to separate out its DNA and to do it correctly. So they organize the spindle fibers, which might not make sense until you see it. So what I'm going to do next is go into each of the organelles. So before we do that, let's look at a general picture. This is a general picture of an animal cell. Here's the nucleus with its DNA. There's the nucleolus. All these filaments here look like DNA. It's actually a double membrane thing, which is cool. And these are the pores which let particular things, certain things go in and out. Here's the endoplasmic reticulum, and you can tell it's the rough one because it's got all those dots on it. Those are ribosomes. This is the smooth ER. Here's a Golgi body or a Golgi apparatus, and that's the shipping and receiving. Here's a mitochondria, and you need the mighty mitochondria to help you with energy. It makes ATP from sugar. Here's as part of the cytoskeleton, so there's a microtubule and microfilament. I guess that's the tubule. Here's the intermediate filament. The microfilaments are the thinner ones. Anyway, they help to keep the structure of the cell. These are microvilli, which we're only going to talk about in the digestive system. I guess we already covered the digestive system. So they help to absorb food into blood from the intestines. Anyway, you don't really, there's only that one unit that we talk about these in. And again, this is just like kind of a conglomerate cell. It's not any one particular cell. You're not going to see a flagellum in the same place where you see microvilli, I don't think. Notice there's a centriole here because this is a eukaryotic cell. Obviously, look at all the stuff in here. And so there's the flagellum, and it would have that in that place. Here's the centrosome, which is made out of two centrioles, and those are going to help organize the chromosomes when they separate. A centriole is something that you're going to find in animal cells and not in plant cells. And plant cells can still separate out their DNA, they just don't organize it with this thing. So these are things that you will not find in animal cells. You won't find chloroplasts because that's for making sugars. That's what plants do. And so animals don't have that. They do photosynthesis. Animals don't do photosynthesis, so they don't have chloroplasts. A central vacuole, so that's going to be that big thing that takes up so much space in a plant cell that helps it with the turgor pressure, keeping a lot of water in there. Cell wall is another one that you're not going to find in the plant cell. That you're not going to find in an animal cell. So animal cells tend to be able to move a little bit or be a little bit more pliable. A cell wall will help will help a plant cell to not explode, which we'll look at in the next unit. And then plasmodesmata are these special connections between different plant cells. Animal cells can have special connections, but not plasmodesmata. And then another thing that are not in animal cells are amyloplasts and chromoplasts. So anytime you see plast, that's actually something that you're going to find in plants, plast. And then the next one is a plant cell, and you can tell it's a plant cell because it has chloroplasts. We just said those are not in animal cells. And it's got this cell wall, which again we said are not in um, animal cells. So, sorry, that are not, yeah, not in animal cells. Okay, so here's a plant cell. You can tell because of the cell wall and the chloroplasts. Also, this big central vacuole you're going to find in plant cells and not animal cells. Here's a nucleus. Here's the rough endoplasmic reticulum. You'll see this in an animal and a plant. You'll see this in an animal and a plant. Smooth ER, animal and plant. Golgi apparatus, animal and plant. Peroxisome will be in an animal and a plant. Mitochondria, super important. Mitochondria are in all eukaryotic cells. So in a chloroplast, a plant can make sugar. In an animal cell and a plant cell, a mitochondria can break down glucose. Make sense? So why would a plant cell make sugar if it wasn't going to break it down? So mitochondria are in both. Things that are not in plant cells, lysosomes, centrioles, and flagella, except for some plant sperm, which would be, I think the mosses and stuff like that will sometimes have plant sperm. And a new interesting fun fact for the day. All right, I think that's it for now.